Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I am your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. Every week on Gracefully Graying, I will be exploring issues that those of us face as we are getting older and gracefully graying or have aging parents. Today my guest is Attorney Howard Linden, who fits into the category of gracefully graying and also has an aging mother. But he is also a man of many hats that we are going to learn about in this session. Howard, welcome to Gracefully Graying.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and your background?
Well, I am an attorney in Southfield, lived my entire life basically in Bloomfield Hills, married to the same woman, Paula, for 44 years, have two wonderful children. Independent, and one of which who has given me two magnificent, bright and smart granddaughters who live around the corner from me. I practice exclusively in the area of probate law, which comprises estate planning and all phases of probate procedure and practice. I've also been a magistrate in the 48th District Court with services which services Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham, Kego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and West Bloomfield.
What is your role as a magistrate, first of all?
As a magistrate, we handle, I share the responsibilities with two other folks. We've been doing it for almost 20 years. It's an appointed position. And I handle arraignments, which is when a person charged in a crime or on a traffic matter has to be read their charges. And
Does this include felonies?
Includes felonies.
So there could be someone charged with first-degree murder, and you could be arraigning that person.
Yes. Luckily, that doesn't happen often or ever in Bloomfield Hills, to the best of my knowledge. Armed robbery, yes. Assault and battery, yes. Sadly, we have a lot of domestic violence cases across the entire spectrum of communities these days.
You know, you brought up an interesting topic because it used to be thought that those who are more well-educated or more affluent were immune. Not so. It's every demographic, every racial, religious, ethnic background, every economic strata. It's a huge problem.
It's a huge problem. Even one case to me is horrifying and a huge problem. And you are correct. Every demographic, every racial entry, everything you can imagine, it runs the whole spectrum. And it isn't in just deprived communities. I get most of mine come from Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham, and it's sad. It's tragic. It's not good, and it can have a lot of consequences to it.
And in my area of family law, I see it a lot, and sadly, often judges, not saying they become immune, but they do become sometimes desensitized because they see so much of it.
Yes.
And
yes.
That makes it more difficult.
It does.
Also, it's more difficult if someone's got a broken nose or has been bloodied or beaten or battered. It's there, but I deal a lot with psychological abuse, and it can be equally devastating, but harder to prove.
Well, I'd rather, frankly, have less of the physical abuse because at least I can see the pictures, address it immediately, protect the spouse, which is what I see a lot of, a spouse. And shockingly, for someone my age or your age, it's either man or woman. So this domestic violence, to leap to the conclusion it's always the female being abused, is not always the case.
Plus, there's a lot, you know, as we're among the aging demographics, there's a lot of elder abuse.
I have
by
seen
family members as
yes,
well as, you know,
yes.
non-family members.
As you said correctly, it covers all stratas, all ages, all colors, creeds, religions, cities. Please don't get the impression there's an epidemic, because there isn't. But there's enough of it that gets my attention.
Howard, you're also a public administrator.
I am.
Tell us about that.
That I've been for, my God, it must be 35 years now. I was appointed by Frank Kelly as the Attorney General Kelly back in the day. And that is a person who helps or is responsible to help individuals in the county, in my county, of course, is Oakland, who do not have family members, cannot afford things on their own, and have to be placed in safe, secure situations as either a guardianship or a conservatorship, or in some cases have no one even to bury them. And so when there's no one to do any of these things, public administrators who have been so designated, judges in those counties in the probate court can use their services in the probate area to help them out.
But there are attorneys who their entire career seem to be acting as public administrators. Is that
yes,
correct?
Yes, that's not me. There are some folks who have end up becoming almost specialized in these areas and have a great volume to do. I went a different direction, but I'm always available. I've been appointed in multiple counties, even though it's not often. If a judge in another county needs someone neutral in a family dispute or a situation requiring an individual who needs help, many times over the decades, and I've been a lawyer, by the way, this will be my 45th year, can appoint me to help out.
Howard, you're very well respected as a lawyer in the area of probate. You are highly regarded as a magistrate. As you said, you've been doing this for 45 years. Do you have any plans for retirement?
Well, that's funny you should mention it, Henry. I'm sure that's why you have me here. I really don't, in the sense of the retirement as I thought retirement was defined when I was 30, or as I thought retirement was defined when my father was coming up. Was
your father a lawyer or not?
No. He was a real estate person. And he worked till he was 82, and the only reason he quit was because he couldn't walk anymore. So they basically said, time's up. So retirement is different today, in my opinion. In fact, I'll tell you, I know we talked about this earlier, I just signed a 10-year lease. And I have every reason to believe I'll make it all 10 years.
There's no reason why not.
That's right. But you asked me a specific question, and I'm going to answer it because it's different today, and I've thought about this. Retirement doesn't mean you have to stop working. I don't want to stop working. I find myself engaged in the process. I still have relevancy. I still have currency in the business. As you may or may not know, my main client base are other attorneys. Other attorneys hire me to do their probate work, whatever that may be. Yes, I have private practice in that regard, but I would say 75% of my work volume is private lawyers hiring me to do things they don't want to do.
So you're an attorney's attorney, for lack of a better word.
If you'd like to say that, that's an accurate assessment.
But that's a high compliment as well.
Well, I always thought it was. I always thought it was. But when you ask what are my retirement plans, or if I plan on retirement, I've kind of feathered into that already by working a few less hours a week. in the earlier days, or days when I was establishing myself, I was putting in, no kidding, at least 70 hours a week, every Saturday. Luckily, hard work and a little bit of luck has paid off, and some of these things can be handled by my staff, which makes me very happy. So I can shrink my day an hour on one end, an hour on another, mainly so I can see my granddaughters, mainly so I have some time to see them at the end of a day. And if I don't have court in the morning, I may get in at the ridiculous hour maybe of 9:30 or 10 o'clock, when I used to get in at 7 or 7:30 or be downtown. But that's how I look at it.
What time does your day end now?
I try to physically leave the office by 4 p.m.
Okay.
But I still work many hours on Saturday, every Saturday. Snow, rain, sleet, doesn't matter. And in case you're wondering, this morning I was downtown at 7 a.m., downtown Detroit, which I go to often. So those habits, those court habits, have remained sadly the same. When I say sadly, I can't change my body clock. So I'm up anyway at 5 o'clock in the morning. But to retire, that just is not something I can wrap my head around.
And I think that's true with more and more people. And I think one of the beautiful things about law, and especially if you are in control of your own practice, you can do as little or as much as you want to some degree, as long as clients still find you useful.
I try to keep up. I go to seminars. I learn new things. I try to be conversant as the law changes in the areas that I specialize in. And yes, you're absolutely right. As long as you have some credibility and currency with people, and the advice you're giving them is either very good, or in my case, if I don't know the answer, I know 4 people who do know the answer. And believe me, at my age, my ego doesn't require me to know everything and be right about everything. I'm happy to refer people out.
Well, Howard, I think it's just as important, not only if you don't know the answer, to have the ability to pick up the phone and talk to someone who does, which is something that's invaluable and isn't created overnight. I mean, you have a network of attorneys and judges who you know, and you know the old saying, a good attorney knows the law, a great attorney knows the judge, and there's some truth to that.
That's true. That's extremely true, and we'll leave it at that. But what I see happening, which is sad, is that the young people trying to come up in my practice sometimes feel that they know everything. And conversations I have with some of these folks is too bad, because you try to be helpful, and yet young people, some young people today, want to be a little aggressive in that area, and I don't particularly care for it myself. But that's another story.
But we don't know everything. I mean,
no, we don't.
That's why we're practicing. We're trying to get it right.
Well, it took me 40 plus years to do it. Yes, correct. Correct. That's exactly right.
Do you think there's any age that someone should consider retiring?
Yeah, and I've seen it, and I talk about it with friends of mine. I see it occasionally in my practice area, where older, in my case, fellows that I've known for decades, either got physically infirm, mentally infirm. It's so clear. It's so clear. They almost tend to start embarrassing themselves when they have such a wonderful history with the court system. And I just pray to God, if any of that ever happens to me, the people that I love and love me will tell me it's time to hang it up before it's too late. You just don't want to do that. You just don't want to do that.
Does your wife ever discuss retirement with you?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, she discussed retirement when we got married. And
Would she say never? Or?
No. She had a little more charming way to say it. When we got married, we made our own vows. And she made me say the following vows: for better, for worse, just never for lunch. Which in my world, and clearly most worlds, means just keep going what you're doing, because she works full time.
What does she do?
She is a interior designer. She renovates homes, renovates space, in great demand now because it's a good economy, and she's always been a good man. She has great taste, has a great eye, and she has a home office and does quite well for herself, and really doesn't want me underfoot 24 hours a day. We've agreed that the best time for us to be together on that basis is on vacation, when we go.
And that's another question. Relationships and what people expect regarding retirement are important, because some people, I know a lot of people who they hit 60 or 65, or even in the case of my personal trainer, who I trained with for the last 20 years, and he's just turning 50, he just decided to semi-retire and move up north. So I guess everyone has some different goal.
Well, I never fault anyone for wanting to stop what they're doing. And it could be for a million reasons that we don't know, okay? But you need to have a plan. If you're married, it needs to be a mutual plan. If you're on different plans, different levels, that's going to make for really a lot of friction from what I see, as you say with your friends. I don't know anybody who stays in retirement. I know several doctors who, after 2 years of golfing 24 hours a day, were ready to blow their head off because they finally got bored and they were healthy, and they had financial success, and they went back to work. They found, as a professional, as you know, we're blessed with the ability to work whenever we want, as long as we have our license.
That's true.
We're not on strike. We don't work on a line, although I did when I was 18 for a summer at the Ford Motor Company, I might add.
That helped you want to go to law school.
Exactly. I ran out of there. But we're blessed with the ability of self-employment, as much or as little as you want. And I've seen tragic cases where men I know, not many, thank God, but enough to show a pattern, that if you just stop doing something and your brain shuts off, they either got sick, they passed away, they became different people. So that's another motivation for me on a personal level.
I think the key is, and with this series of shows of Gracefully Graying, I'm learning more and more. For some people, retirement is an answer, but the key is you've got to have a passion. You've got to have a hobby. You've got to have something.
That's right.
That, if you're going to travel a lot, you can't golf every day, you can't play cards every day, but if there are things you really enjoy doing and want to do it, all the more power to you.
And if you have a partner to do them,
that's true.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. It really is. If you're blessed with a spouse or a significant other that will embrace your goals and plans, that's the ballgame for me, really.
Now, Howard, you deal with probate, you deal with estates, you deal with people who are end of life, so to speak. What about finances? It's like, you need enough money to retire, and I don't know what the answer is, what is enough. And someone might say 10 million is not enough, and someone might say I have $500,000 and I'm going to make it on that plus Social Security. So,
well, I think that's a very good question, and I see all facets of that in my practice. And
tell us about that.
Well, I will tell you that there's never enough money. I mean, the bottom line is you, me, whatever number, everyone has this number, like you just said. Whatever it is, it's never enough. Why isn't it enough? Because you can't count on how long you'll live. You can't count on the staples not outpacing what you earn. What does that mean? Or what you have to earn on, whether it's interest or growth. You can't predict what gas is going to cost, electric is going to cost, food is going to cost. You can't predict that. And so unless you are one of the fortunate people with, you know, a 9, 8-figure nest egg, which most of us don't have, it's a tough area. And you certainly can't just live on Social Security, no, even if you max out, because sadly, for what, and that's another show another day, you're taxed again. So whatever you make on your Social Security, you're taxed on that again. So what is the amount that you need? You know, ironically, my wife and I are going through this conversation right now because we have a very comfortable home. We have a lot of land, we have a pool, a lot of upkeep issues. Try, Henry, going through your house with your spouse and figuring out what you don't need. Well, we don't need that. Well, yes, I do. Well, I need a bigger closet. Well, you need a small. It becomes a planning issue. And I'm not saying that to be funny, but
but your wife is an expert.
She is. She is an expert. But it's not about being an expert. It's about what you will accept if you're so-called downsizing. Where will you downsize so you'll be comfortable? How close can you be in proximity to each other after 45 years in a much larger location? It's multiple conversations over multiple years. It is. It is. Believe me.
Well, the other thing with downsizing, you know, they're building a lot of homes in the area of Bloomfield Township, Bloomfield Hills, and
separate condos.
And they're small, and they're very, very expensive. So it's like you're paying more to get less, and that kind of bothers me.
Well, you're not the only one, because and we've looked. I'm not going to sit here. I mean, just to get a feel like that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, my son-in-law has bet money on the fact we'll never move for this very reason, because what you see out there is ridiculously expensive for a third of the space, even if it's a freestanding or standalone condo, which is everyone's dream. You talk to every older person. I'd love no maintenance, stand alone so no one's on top of me, no one's sharing a wall with me. That would be a nightmare for me. That's why an apartment or a condo that shares walls and is high-rise, my biggest fear is to have someone move in there that plays music at 3 in the morning, loud, rock and roll music. I'm used to a little room. I'm used to being quiet. I'm a quiet guy, like to live quietly. It's a challenge, especially if you want to have all the amenities you're used to and be close to your grocery stores, your drug stores. Right. You know, what do you do? I don't know. I don't know yet. We're working on it at my house. Work in progress.
Well, you have a beautiful home. You have things that you have to work on. You have, what, 3 acres, you said? Which is a lot of land.
Well, it was not as a lot 30 years ago as it is today. You know, when I hit a certain age, you know. I love it. Don't misunderstand me. This isn't about not liking it. It's about trying to balance life, work, finances, as you mentioned. What's enough? It's expensive. So what do? You try to balance it all. Because frankly, I don't know what my practice is going to generate 5, 10 years from now. I don't know if I'll be alive in 5 or 10 years from now.
No one knows, and you know, that's one.
That's why conversations are important.
Well, it's also a conversation. Is your goal to leave a lot to your heirs, or is your goal to have $100 in your bank account the day you pass away? So, you know.
Well, those are always questions, and I think it depends on your children, if that's who you're talking about, how well they're doing, if they're independent, and what your philosophy is on your life. So it is not, believe me, I can see 1,000 people a year in my office, and there's not one that thinks the same. So it's not one size fits all.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
And
you can't, in my world, in probate, there's the illness factor. There's the aging, huge, which is really the biggest unknown.
I mean, you plan and things happen. I have a friend who often says that life is like a minefield, and something's going to get you, just know what, and you don't know when, but
that's right.
Something's going to happen.
Well, you don't think that way when you're 40 or 30, because most of us, thank goodness, are in good shape. When you hit 60 and 70, things happen. I mean, I honestly don't know anyone who doesn't have something medically challenging, not debilitating necessarily, but slows you down, whether it's just arthritis or a bad knee. I mean, it's awful.
Getting old is not for sissies, is one of our taglines.
No, never.
Howard, we're down to less than a minute. Give us a couple takeaways before we sign off.
Be smart, think ahead. If you're blessed enough to have a spouse of long-standing or significant other, talk a lot. Make sure you're on the same page. Make sure you do the right thing by each other, support each other, respect each other, and the word of the day would be compromise.
I mean, communication, especially if you have a spouse or significant other, is so important. And it's like we're gracefully graying, we're learning. Hopefully you'll be practicing for many, many more years. Howard Linden, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Gracefully Graying.
My pleasure, sir.
And I want to thank you for watching Gracefully Graying. And again, I hope you look up Gracefully Graying not only here at Bloomfield Township's website and online, but also at the Henry Gornbein YouTube network. Thank you.